Hi, aloha. I'm Chris Lethem, and today's guest is Jay Jurick. Jay works with a software application called Netsuite, and the name of my show is called The Economy and You. So welcome for those that are watching on OC16. So I wanted to sort of say hello to you, Jay, and welcome, and thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So we've been talking on the show here a lot about people who are looking to start up a new company. We have people who talk about funding new companies, getting new companies launched here in Hawaii, how they could go about doing that, and we're finding opportunities and all this now. So now you're a business person and you found an opportunity, you found a niche in the market, you developed a new product, and you're out there working and doing the marketing, but now there's a new problem. Why are you getting orders, right? You need to be prospecting. You're developing leads and prospects, and this is where you come in.
Yes.
So what you offer is a product. I'm not sure it's the only product you offer, but you do offer a product called NetSuite.
Yes.
Okay. So now, how long have you been working with NetSuite?
We started back in October of 2004 and have been at it ever since with NetSuite and kind of associated applications, not just NetSuite, but things around NetSuite.
But these are all about developing or having products or platforms for helping small businesses?
Small to mid-sized now.
Small to mid-sized businesses.
When we started out, it was mostly small businesses, including the smallest of companies. You know, mom and pop really was something we could do back then. But now it's really kind of graduated up into the sort of the small to mid-sized company market.
Okay. So, but let's. So you started back in '04. Now, back in '04, that's going back just a few years ago. This was probably in the beginning of the NetSuite. Was this in the beginning of NetSuite, or had they been around a few years already? They were started back in '98?
Yeah, NetSuite was founded in 1998 by a couple of fellows, one who you probably never heard of, named Evan Goldberg, and another guy who you may have heard of by the name of Larry Ellison.
Never heard of that guy. He's a real estate developer.
Become locally
Hawaii.
famous anyway. Yeah.
Okay, so Larry Ellison and this Mr. Goldberg founded NetSuite. And NetSuite, kind of in my mind, is a sort of all-in-one turnkey platform for helping a small or mid-sized company, or maybe helping small companies to turn into a mid-sized company even, manage all the sort of component pieces of their business.
Yeah, and NetSuite was really founded, you know, when Evan, who had worked at Oracle and was one of their chief product developers actually at Oracle, he quit Oracle. Told Larry, I'm going to go and do something on my own.
He told Larry, take this job and show.
More or less.
Yeah.
I think it was a little friendlier than that, perhaps. But
right.
He started up a small software company.
Okay.
And he ran that company using QuickBooks, as most small businesses who start up do.
Yes.
And then they're no huge fans of Microsoft, so he didn't want Outlook as his kind of contact management piece. So he used a piece of software that some may have heard of called ACT.
Yes.
And ACT is a little contact manager, sales manager kind of application. And so they use that for sort of their customer relationship management piece. And then the two didn't talk to each other very well. And when he was traveling, he would try and VPN into it. And, you know, he went through all the normal nightmares that a small company goes through managing their data.
Yeah.
And when he divested himself of that company, he went back to Larry, and they were sitting on Larry's yacht, and he said, hey, Larry, you know, this is a nightmare. I mean, at Oracle, we come to work, we look at a dashboard, everything's there that we need to not only see how we're doing, but see what to do next, and, you know, exception reporting and all kinds of stuff is right there for us.
Because this is the kind of thing we talk about when we're sitting on a yacht.
Yeah, of course. Exactly. So, you know, he was describing his pain in being away from that kind of access to data and those kinds of tools. And Larry said, well, you're a bright young lad. Why don't you cook something up and we'll sell it to the other, you know, Oracle sells to the Fortune 1000, right? But, you know, last I checked, there were only 1,000 of those. So, you know, why don't we take it to the Fortune 1 million and see how that works?
Okay.
So build something out. So there were three really huge ideas that they started with. One was, let's build an application, as you said, Chris, let's build an application that runs everything in one. So the accounting and finance, the reporting for all of that, the CRM, like what ACT was doing for Evan, even maybe the web presence, inventory if you've got that, project management if you've got that. Let's build an application that can run an entire small to mid-sized company in one piece, one database. It'll run on Oracle, and we'll serve that over the internet, and what we call nowadays cloud computing.
Right, but this was before the cloud.
Well, we didn't call it that then, and if you remember, this second big idea was very unpopular at the time. I don't know if you remember the whole ASP subscription-based model of software that had sort of been started up in the early to mid-90s.
When you say ASP, you're talking about application as a service?
It was that, but the acronym is actually Application Service Provider Model.
Yes,
That's what they called it back then. And it later became Software as a Service was kind of what we called it for a while. And then now we call it cloud computing, right? So there have been some notable failures in the area of this ASP model, which actually they failed and took companies' data with them.
Right.
And so if you were in Silicon Valley at the time, you just knew that didn't work. Everybody
and
knew
you were
it didn't
afraid
work.
of losing your data, of course, because if you weren't with a large firm that was well established and they went belly up, and they couldn't afford to maintain their servers, you had a problem.
Right.
If you didn't have tools to extract your data before they closed their doors. Plus, you still had to migrate over to another system.
Yeah, so picture this.
Yeah,
everybody knew it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
Everybody except these two guys sitting on the yacht. So the third big idea, not to go too far off the path here, but the third big idea was they'll build it so that in the user interface, if you want to mold the way NetSuite runs around a business's processes. So let's say, for example, you need, your customers, you need to track their eye color. So you need a new attribute on a customer record that says, hey, this guy's eyes are blue.
Okay.
Let's build the tools to make those kinds of adjustments quickly and easily right through the user interface of the application point and click.
So
literally you can do
dynamically add fields as you need to.
20 seconds.
Oh, nice.
Right? You don't need an engineer, you just need a guy who knows how to click a mouse.
Okay.
So those were the three really big ideas that they started with, and they did start by building the accounting piece first. Larry's advice to Evan was, you go do it, I know you can do it, go kid. And he said, but first, get the numbers right, get the money right, get the accounting piece built. So it started out being called NetLedger.
Oh.
NetSuite's original name in 1998 was NetLedger. And so then it went from there where they started actually, once that was solid, they started building in the CRM.
So it sounds like NetLedger sort of started off like a QuickBooks type of
It was QuickBooks Online before they dreamt of QuickBooks Online.
Ah, okay, okay. Well, the internet back in those days wasn't as functional as it is today.
Exactly.
And the HTTP protocol, of course, has been expanded quite a bit since those days.
Yep.
So very interesting. Okay, so now they built this thing, it was running online. Now it's using cloud-based, so I'm assuming that it was a multi-tenant platform where there was one system and then people had created an account and they could log in and use it.
Right.
Of course, now you're talking about managing millions and millions of records.
Yep.
And they're all into a single system.
Right. And actually, that shared tenancy is exactly right. So that server is taking care of several, let's say, of our customers. And it's running on a single Oracle license, though. So you're actually getting the benefit of having an Oracle database behind your business, which most small businesses, it's just beyond their budget. But since it's spread over a number of customers, and the deal that NetSuite has with Oracle is quite...
So it's a virtualized environment that sits on a server farm, is essentially what you're talking about. If anybody people aren't quite sure what that means that it doesn't sit on one particular computer. It sits across multiple computers.
Right.
But it's a virtualized environment, so you're basically taking advantage of the computing power of all these computers as you need it.
Right.
So there is an cost efficiency for the user.
Right.
Because they're not having to pay for individual machines, and they're only paying for the resources that they need.
Right. And think about those machines.
Yeah.
State-of-the-art, fastest possible available servers running in a secure data center that's managed by teams of people who know more about security than I've ever dreamed of, or anybody who works at any of the companies that I deal with. They don't have IT people like that.
Yeah. Well,
So
these people are really the best of breed, right?
Yeah, you get security, reliability, you get all that.
And actually, the cloud is built around. A lot of people have a misnomer that the cloud is somehow unsafe. In fact, the cloud computing concept was really developed with the underlying concept of security built into it.
If I was going to store my credit card number somewhere,
Uh-huh.
and you offered me to store it on a server that you're running, and I have all the respect in the world for you, Chris, you know that.
Oh, yeah, well, because
But
I'm
you're
a
running
genius when
one
it comes to
server,
computers, yes.
and Savvis Data Center, where NetSuite is co-located,
Right.
is running at another server, and I have a choice between those two.
Yes.
I'm sorry, but I'm going to pick Savvis
Oh,
Data Center.
that hurts my feelings. I'm really hurt. Okay, so anyhow, so now for the customer though, this is really advantageous because they're not having to maintain the servers, or the cost of maintaining the servers. They're not having to patch the machines. They're not having to patch the software.
Right.
So give me a sort of a crisp understanding of what are some of the key component features of this platform. And why, if I'm a small business person, why should I be seriously looking at the NetSuite platform?
Yeah, there's a few areas to talk about there, but
Okay.
here's a really good one to start with. Taking the case of separate systems, and in some cases when we arrive on scene at a small business, maybe it's a startup, let's say. 'Cause
Yeah.
You mentioned that, and this is really sweet for startups. We land there, and maybe they're a project-based company, and so they've got a lot of pieces of paper regarding what's going on with the projects for their customers. And they're in folders, and somebody's running around with folders, passing it from desk to desk so that people are doing work on it and checking off that they've completed tasks and so forth. Sometimes that's how we land. Sometimes they've graduated, it's on an Excel spreadsheet or something like that.
Yes, the most sophisticated of technologies today.
Well, and
which
believe
is
me,
the
I love
spreadsheet.
Excel. I mean, I use it every minute of the day,
Yes,
right? But
yes.
we could format data to get it ready to push into a system like NetSuite, let's say.
Right, right.
But on the other hand, if you've got 15 people now, you've grown, you're starting at the ceiling. You got 15 people logging into the Excel spreadsheet that's running the project.
And having multiple people hitting an Excel spreadsheet is not a good thing.
Right. And I could name a couple of customers. One notable one that I'm thinking about right now, and I'm not going to say the name, but they run projects, hundreds of projects every year. And they were doing that. They had like over a dozen people logging into a single Excel spreadsheet that they were running their projects in. And occasionally the thing would just fold up and die.
Yeah, not a good thing.
And then everybody's running around with their hair on fire trying to figure out what's going on out there in the street with guys, out there hammering nails and stuff. And I'm not going to get too specific because you'll figure out who this is. But you know what I mean. I mean, it turns into a really bad situation. And we migrated them into NetSuite where they're managing their projects in there to this day, right? This has been about 5 years since they signed up. Still doing every bit as many projects or more, a lot more gracefully, and it actually lowered their headcount in their whole operations division.
Well, there's a lot of advantages when you have good software, of course. Some of the advantages, of course, is that you improve company morale. You have less training time. You have less turnover. You have more people showing up for work and not going on vacation. You have people less stressed out. You have less training costs. You have people who actually enjoy their work and show up, and you have better output.
Well, and now you're hitting the sweet spot for me personally.
Okay.
I mean, our business is not about technology. And you can talk about certain areas of technology I have no idea about. And I kind of try to keep it that way because we're very focused on NetSuite, how it works, and how to get it to work best for our clients. But our business is really not about the technology. It's really about the people.
And it's about understanding the processes, right?
That was my next word.
Yes.
You guessed what I was about to say next. Yeah, I mean, we got to get in there, understand what they're doing, both try to emulate what they're doing with our system, but also sometimes we identify, hey, look, you've been doing this way for years, but are you sure that's the best way? If we have it running in this system, we can do it a whole different way and take 8 steps out of the process for you. And of course,
so it's really about process optimization then.
It is in part, but also it's about user adoption.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. You do need to get buy-in from the users. One of the challenges that I've seen with the military when they would build software from the top down is you would see people actually quit, retire, and leave rather than figure out how to use a new piece of software.
Yep.
And one of the things I do have to say, as I've been digging around in the NetSuite since I knew you were going to come on the show, was to go in and dig around a little bit. And what I really found, it was fairly intuitive. There are drop downs where you need drop downs. It's mostly pick lists. Because it's role based, you can see pretty much when you pick a particular role, such as if you're in sales or if you're in accounting or management, you have an interface or a dashboard that's relevant to the work that you're doing.
Right.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all. It's really designed around the different roles that people participate in. That's one of the things I liked about it.
Yeah, and in fact, we have the flexibility in a very granular way to tailor those roles exactly to that person in that company. And sometimes it's a big difference. The guy who's selling, the company I'll go back to again, the same one, the guy who is selling the commercial jobs, he has a whole different interface, whole different access to data, a whole different process flow than the guy who's selling the residential jobs. Those are two very different roles. They're both selling.
Right.
But we can really decide and implement exactly what access to data this person has and what tools they have at their disposal. So, and it could be very different from the guy sitting at the next desk who's doing a similar but different, in some ways, job.
Well, it sounds great. Let's talk a little bit more about this when we come back. We're going to go to commercial, folks. I'm Chris Lethem. This is The Economy and You. Today's guest is Jay Jurick, and we're talking about NetSuite. We'll be right back. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jay Fidel. That's Ted Ralston. Ted is the host of Where the Road Leads. It shows every Friday from 4 to 5 p.m. It's about technology. It's about how people collaborating and solve problems with modern technology. It's where the road leads. We all know that. We should all be listening. Join us there, 4 to 5 p.m. every Friday. Now, what about that do you agree with?
All of it.
I knew he'd say that. Aloha. Say aloha.
Aloha.
Good.
Hi, my name is Andrew Howard. I'm an astronomer at the Institute for Astronomy at the University of Hawaii up in Manoa. I'd like to tell you about the annual open house that we're having. This year it is on April 6th, 11 to 4 p.m. It's an all ages event, kids, grown-ups, even people in between, everyone is welcome. We have a lot of really fun activities. You get to meet astronomers, look at yourself in an infrared camera, play with Legos, make robots, look at videos. You can even some of the kids like to make comets out of gravel and snow. Even adults like to do that too. You'll be able to look at the sun with a solar camera safely. It's really a great activity. We do this every year in April, and I hope to see you this year. Thank you.
You're counting too fast. Hi, we're back. Hi, I'm Chris Lethem. This is The Economy and You. Today's guest is Jay Jurick. We're talking about NetSuite. And what's the name of your company, Jay?
CORE-Effect.
CORE-Effect. Why CORE-Effect? How did you come up with that name?
It was just difficult. We were trying to find something short that we could put in a URL that would work.
CORE-Effect, that worked. And actually, you can spell that one.
Yeah, we have a hyphen in it because CORE-Effect without a hyphen is actually a rock band somewhere in the East Coast. So
really?
we had to kind of work around that.
Make sure you got to get that right then on the URL. Okay.
But I think part of it is we operate in the very center of a company to try and get all of their key processes working properly, and hopefully the effect we have in the end is to make sure they're operating at peak efficiency, right? They're doing things with more with less, and everybody's making more money and going home from work at a decent hour and those kinds of things.
Yeah, because we do not like to pay for overtime.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not good. So this is it sounds like it's a fairly good application. And then how would people get a hold of you to find out more about what you're doing?
Yeah, they could go to our website at core-effect.com, or they can ring us on the phone.
They can call you.
They could, 791-8712.
And you'd pick up. Well, that's novel. I don't know how many times I call people and nobody picks up the phone these days. Well,
we try, don't we?
Actually, I haven't had that problem with you, but sometimes it's frustrating when you call. So much of the time people are texting today, and I still have the habit of making a phone call. I tend to make the call first, and texting is my backup.
Yep.
So I guess I'm old school that way. But
well, we also have the magic of forwarding. So sometimes because we are out of clients a lot, so sometimes it's just coming back around to this thing.
Back to the cell phone. Yeah. So how did you I wanted to kind of ask you, how did you sort of find NetSuite and decide that this was the platform that you wanted to market? Because obviously there's competing platforms out there.
Yeah, there is. Not so much a direct competitor at this point that's really viable. But yeah, I mean, there's also the idea of, doing this in pieces still, and using best of breed applications to do those pieces. Clearly, there's some disadvantages to that, but part of what we do too is integrate those to NetSuite. But anyway, how did we get started was the question, so
yes.
I should really get to that. And I don't know if you look at PBN online, if it's okay to talk about that.
Yes.
And their format of their articles has kind of changed. It used to be that you had, the article was sort of this couple of lines of text that went across and then a very narrow column that went down, and in the middle of that was this huge ad.
Yeah.
And it's a national organization of magazines or, newspapers. And that ad was taken by a national advertiser typically. So it was like Microsoft, or maybe it was Oracle or somebody like that.
Uh-huh.
So I'm reading this article one day, this is back in '04, and I'm reading the article and I look, and in the center of the article that I'm reading is an ad with no trademark on it, no logo, no company name at all. It's a picture of a guy who looks kind of like me. He's wearing a Oxford cloth shirt, with a open collar, but kind of a guy about, a certain age.
Look like us.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Unfortunately, yes. And he's happy.
Yeah.
He's salt.
Oh, that's not like us.
He's
Okay,
just
go
like
ahead.
this. And it says, the caption reads, "I'm QuickBooks defector number 1,632.
Oh.
And so here I am, part of our practice, right, was QuickBooks and Peachtree and all these small accounting packages, in addition to ACT and Goldmine and all the CRM stuff, Sales Logics, and we were helping companies with all this stuff. And so I'm curious, like, why is this guy so happy about getting off of QuickBooks? So of course I have to click through the ad, which is atypical of me, but I had to do that, and I land on netsuite.com. And I grasped the concept within a few seconds. We're gonna take QuickBooks on one hand and whatever else is running on the other hand and put them together in one application. And it was like, I was frothing at the mouth to get at this thing because this is the answer to a lot of the issues that our clients were having at the time.
Right.
So I dialed the phone really quick,
Uh-huh.
and I get transferred eventually to the person who was handling their channel program, right? Value-added resellers is what we called it back in those days. Now we're called solution providers, but we were value-added resellers back then. So I get this lady on the phone, and I explained to her that I'm highly interested. We want to get going with this thing. And she says, well, look, here's what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to come and go through boot camp and get, a test taken and pass that and get certified. And then you can go ahead and we'll make you a certified solution provider.
Oh.
And I said, well, that's great. I want to start now. When's the next boot camp? And she said, well, you can't do that. It's next week. And I said, no, you don't understand. I want this thing now. So I'll get on a plane. You just tell me where to be.
Okay.
And she said, well, you also got to pay for this. Forget that. We're going to do this thing. Never mind all that.
Okay.
We're going to do this, right? And I said, and we had a little conversation about the details. And at the end of the phone call, and this is going to sound familiar to some people in Hawaii, at the end of the phone call, I said, look, this is not going to affect my decision. We're doing this thing, but I just got to know, how many NetSuite solution providers do you have in Hawaii right now?
Right.
And her, how when people's voices kind of go up at the end when they're really curious about something, and she says, Hawaii? Like, you mean that place with the grass shacks and the palm trees and all that? That's the Hawaii you're talking about? You're calling me from Hawaii? So that was how that went. So I said, yeah, and so that was the beginning. I went over there, managed to pass the difficult test, and that was it.
And you've been doing this for 11 years now.
Yeah, and actually, by the way, that test qualified you to do absolutely nothing. My first big implementation was an adventure, to say the least. They're still with us. That customer is still with us after 11
But it sounds like to me, you one of the advantages that you've had being that you've done this for 11 years now is you've become a veteran at getting things set up.
Yes.
For new accounts.
Yes, but there's constantly more. NetSuite
Yes.
releases 2 versions each year. And so
Now-
each year we go through training on the new features.
So my question is, if I'm a user, if I have a NetSuite, if I'm using the NetSuite program, is this going to create a problem for me where I'm having to retrain and learn new things, or is it intuitive? I mean, from a user's perspective, is it still intuitive?
I guess there's yes and no answers to what you're saying. This last release that we just had, 2014.2, they happened spring and fall, right? So this last one in the fall was the biggest change I've seen in NetSuite in these 11 years, as far as the user interface.
Okay.
They really were overdue, actually, for kind of a remake in order to make the user interface more capable for small screens, like tablets and phones. By the way, there is a phone app, but if you're browsing to it, it's difficult on a small screen in the old user interface, much easier in the new one. And so, but that was a transition that users had to go through. And you know, the downside of this, I'll be honest, is they land on you.
So now my question is that if you're, okay, so now I get a new version, because I'm logging in and it's web-based, do I get to choose when I want the new version, or the new version just comes and you have to be ready for it?
It lands on you. Now, about a month and a half before it lands on you, they give you access to what they call release preview. And release preview is an exact copy of your production database that you're logging into in a separate URL.
Okay.
And you get to go in there and test it out. We'd use it for testing of different customizations we've made, you know, different programming we've done in NetSuite, for example. We use that for testing purposes, but users, anytime they want during that long period of time, can go in there and just try it out, see how it looks. And
so then they can have some internal training to make sure they're up to speed. Now, do they contact you when they have questions about the changes in the application?
Yes, we do actually offer support as one of the services that we provide to our clients. So yes, they might call us, they might email us, they might submit a support case to us.
So this is where you add value to this product.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So what does it take to get? Now I'm here. I'm saying, okay, I want to use NetSuite. So am I going to? What do I need to do as a small business, as a startup company? What do I need to do? What's it going to cost me to get into this platform and start taking advantage of all its weird and wonderful features?
Well, there's two questions, or what do you do and what does it cost? So let's take the cost.
Okay.
NetSuite, I would say, you know, if you're going to, let's say, compare it to running your business in QuickBooks,
okay,
it's expensive. I'll just be blunt.
NetSuite is expensive compared to QuickBooks, but QuickBooks is just one sort of the ledger component of what NetSuite has to offer. So it's one component of that.
Right. And you know, so you're talking about $350 a year or something if you upgrade your QuickBooks every year. So really inexpensive. And actually, I can't say enough good things about QuickBooks.
Yeah.
For what it does, it's awesome, and we have customers who are still on it. Clients of ours are still on QuickBooks, and we're telling them stay there.
Right.
You know, I mean, some people just don't need CRM. We've got customers who've got one customer.
Well, if you have one customer, you don't need a CRM. But the thing is, if you're always looking for new customers, if you're a subscription-based entity and you're always adding new customers or managing customers, at what point do you justify something like NetSuite?
Yeah, well, a lot of times it boils down to this, and this is, let me express this in the way of like one of the very best case scenarios I see as a result of what we do.
Okay.
There's somebody who's shuffling paper around, you know, like maybe the folder-based project company that I mentioned, right? There's somebody who's shuffling paper around for most of their day, or maybe multiple people doing that. And we get to relieve them of that time-sucking, you know, whereas the Johnson folder took 20 minutes today alone for, you know, 3 people, right? We managed to do some streamlining, and we get it so that they can operate, let's say our operations division goes from 6 seats down to 5. Now, the best case scenario is that seat that goes away.
What do you mean by seat? Is that like a user license?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, it's somebody who's doing processes in the business.
Okay.
So they take that employee who they're paying X to every year, and they repurpose that person. I don't want to see anybody get let go.
Okay.
They repurpose that person, and that person gets involved in the sales department or sales support, let's say.
Okay.
And they enable they're performing a function now that's a revenue generating
as opposed
function.
To a cost.
Right.
Okay.
I love that turnaround.
Yeah.
I love that switch.
So they turn into an investment as opposed to an expense.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
that's what efficiencies are about in business, right?
Yeah.
It's about each employee being a profit center or someone who's contributing to a profit center.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think things like that we do now, we're thinking, well, you know, so it isn't $300 a year.
Okay.
So it's a little more than that. This is worth it.
But you pay based on the amount of licenses.
Yeah, the company's license is X, and it depends. There's several versions, so I don't know how deep you want to dive into the detail of this, but the company's license is X, and users are X per month.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So it's based on a per month charge.
Right.
Okay, well, we'll be right back, folks. I'm Chris Lethem. This is The Economy and You. Today's guest is Jurick. We'll be right back.
Aloha, I'm Keli'i Akina, president of the Grassroots Institute, and host on Ehana Kako, a weekly program on the Think Tech Hawaii broadcast network. Ehana Kako means let's work together. Think of the sad alternative, let's not work together. Here in Hawaii, with all of our diversity and the richness of the people, it's important for us to come together around issues on the basis of what's right and what's good and what's going to serve the common good. And that's what we try to do at Ehana Kako. Every week, we interview movers and shakers, people in government, business, and other sectors of society to talk about how to create together a better government, economy, a better world here in Hawaii that can bless the rest of the world. I thank you for your attention to Think Tech Hawaii, and we look forward to seeing you every Monday, 2 to 3 p.m. on the Think Tech Hawaii broadcast network. We're Ehana Kako, and we wish you well. Aloha.
Aloha, everyone. I'm Chris Lethem. My show is The Economy and You. Welcome. Today's guest is Jay Jurick. Jay and I have been discussing a product called Netsuite and talking about sort of all the challenges and why customers should be looking at this as a sort of a turnkey solution for them when they're setting up a new operation, a new business, or they're really trying to transform and move away from a paper-like environment to being able to manage data and not do redundant data entry and that sort of thing.
Right.
So now, what I wanted to kind of talk about was, okay, so if you have a user, and we talked about the sort of who would be a good user, or a likely person that would take advantage of this platform. So how do you actually transition them into something like NetSuite? Okay, I've got everything on papers and in folders and in my filing cabinets. Where do I begin?
Yeah, and that's sort of the worst case, what you just described, because somehow that paper information has to become digital.
Okay.
So there may be some intern work involved or something
Okay.
to try and get digital. And a lot of companies now, it is in Excel or QuickBooks or some other application.
Well, sometimes, you know, we've got things on spreadsheets, but we've got them in files and folders.
Sure.
In different spreadsheets. We may have something for, you know, different classifications of prospects versus sales that we've made over the years.
Right.
We may have some in QuickBooks. We may be using some type of contact management solution at this point.
Right.
Okay. Can we migrate that data into NetSuite?
Yeah, and that's a big part of what we do kind of right at the end of the process, actually. Before that, there's a whole large amount of looking at how the business runs, understanding the processes, and that's first.
So this is sort of building out workflow processes or sequence diagrams and really being able to visually understand how they're running their operation.
Yeah.
So this is like what you do.
Hey, are you looking for a job? I mean, you get this. You do a great job for us.
Yeah.
So yeah, exactly. I mean, we're figuring out how data flows in the system, how we go from a lead to cash, you know, that whole process, how we go from a purchase request or requisition or whatever, all the way through to paying for it with a check. We understand how the processes work in the business first. Then we start modeling how is that going to run on NetSuite. And typically you're trying to do two things in balance. You're trying to get NetSuite to run in the best way it can by using, if possible, as much of the standard NetSuite features, the native NetSuite features.
As we can see on the screen here, you've got so you've got the e-commerce, the CRM, and the financials.
Right.
So it's getting all these things to play nicely together.
And getting the people involved, each with their different role, as we discussed earlier, to getting them the tools they need to do their job, and getting them access to the data that they need to make better decisions, you know, all those kinds of things.
And you got to get buy-in from all these people too, don't you?
Well, that's a big part of it. So,
Yeah.
so you know, people who do agile software development understand this concept really good. Get screens in front of them right away. Show them, hey, this is what NetSuite does out of the box. How much of this will work for you, and what needs to be different here? And then start molding it around what will serve them best in doing their job and getting access to data. So that's a big part of it. So that modeling piece is the second piece. First is analysis and, you know, understanding.
Right.
Then there's the modeling, the design, and all of that, and checking that constantly against the key stakeholders. And typically we have a project team of one person from every single department. Right?
So there's multiple iterations as you're going through this. This isn't a one-step process.
Right, and the nice thing about NetSuite is that point-and-click configuration. It doesn't take long. whoops, you didn't want that field there? Here, hang on, let me just move it over.
Oh, okay.
Click, click, boom, done.
Or put it where it makes sense. Sometimes it's about moving something into a place where it's more obviously beneficial.
Yep, and you know, my favorite phrase that I say over and over again all day, every day is, look at it now. Refresh your browser and look at it now.
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah, this is much better.
Oh, okay, okay.
So there's a lot of that along the process.
Okay.
At the very end of this whole thing, we've got a model that works. So we've got a structure to the database. We've got screens that look right to users. We've got printed forms that look correct to them, you know, invoice form or a purchase order or what have you. We've got all that designed and built. At the very end of that is migrating the data from all the various places where that came from into NetSuite.
Okay.
And we do that fairly quickly too, because we would have prepared templates that will,
But do you give them something like a spreadsheet that says, okay, I need a column that's going to store first name, last name, phone number, email addresses, all that
Right.
sort of data.
Right.
And then once you have all those sort of, in the programming world, we would call these APIs. Once you've got sort of all these APIs mapped out with all the data structure,
right,
then it's a matter of them giving you the data that fits that structure,
right.
atomizing the data. Sometimes, you know, you get a spreadsheet that'll have the first name and last name are together, or, you know, it's got the middle name in the middle of all that, you know, and then you got to parse it out.
Yeah, and actually a lot of the stuff we do in that area will provide a template that has, and it's in Excel, you know, it's got
Yes.
a bunch of Excel machinery that just goes
Right.
ahead and breaks all
Right.
that out or
Well,
combines things,
breaking
or-
that data apart when it's like an address, for example, if you need to break up the component pieces of an address, I can tell you, I've actually done this work, where you try and figure out all the different parts of an address and break it up apart and atomize that data into its component pieces. That's some serious code writing.
It's a formula about this long.
Yeah.
I can get it on the screen.
Yeah.
Oh, here's an executive dashboard.
Okay.
Actually, this is a single portlet from it.
So this is like this is sort of like a way, if you're an administrator, to check and see the data and see an overview. Is this like an overview? Or
Yeah,
comparative?
I
It
mean-
looks like a comparative.
Yeah, we call this the key performance indicators portlet, meaning how's the business running? And this would be different. Like a sales guy has new leads that he's put in this week versus last week or last month or whatever. How's my funnel? You know, what's my forecast showing right now against my quota? You know, it's got all those kinds of metrics. Whereas the CEO would see something more like what you just saw. What's my bank balance?
Yes.
What's my receivables? What's my payables?
To me, that's the end game for this is if you're trying to manage your company and you can get everybody on board and they're actually inputting the data as they need to, of course, make you know, garbage in, garbage out. But if people are using the system and you've got, it looks like there's a lot of structure to ensure there's that kind of accountability going on. But if you're inputting all this data and you're trying to look at your cash flows coming in or your revenue accrual, you know, your accrued revenues, your expenses, and all these things, the idea behind this application is it's giving you all of that. It's giving you the ability to manage your organization effectively.
Yeah, and you kind of said a thing there that reminds me of how this usually goes. You go to the accounting department, and they're populated by people of a certain personality. And so you tell them, this is what we're going to do, and this is how you do it, and they do it. And then you have all that nice data populating immediately. And now I'm going to say this, and all you salespeople
It's a
out there,
generalization.
all
Let's
you
just say it is a
salespeople out there, I
generalization.
are one. I'm a sales guy. All right, I can sell. I do it sometimes too, right? I'm doing a few things here, but I sell, and I know I have a little bit of this personality. You tell me that I can't do something, and I'll show you that I can, whether you want me to or not. I'll find a way to work around this and get it done, right? So you're going to, we go to the sales department, we go, here's what you got. You're going to do this, and then they.
And they are bent
eventually
on
do it.
Yes, they're bent on doing it their own way initially.
No,
right?
we have to make it make sense
Yeah.
to them too, right?
Yes.
So in a sense, it has to be sold to the sales department. They have to realize that they're going to make more money by utilizing the system. We're going to put information in front of them that's going to help them make better decisions about where to put their time.
Because salespeople like to do this, they don't like to do this.
Well, and we're working on that too. I mean, you can voice into some of this stuff. I like to talk.
Well, I did sales for a while, and I can tell you, I was guilty of, you know, I didn't really like doing the paperwork. I was so concentrated on writing business, so focused on getting the business written that I wasn't really good about managing leads and following up and entering the information into systems.
Ooh.
Yes.
How many companies have we arrived, and every Friday afternoon, the salespeople have to enter in a bunch of data on an Excel spreadsheet about what they did that week.
Yes.
and submit that to the sales manager. And so they spend 2-3 hours tearing their hair out, like, oh, I hate doing this.
And they have to,
Oh my
because
God,
they're trying to pull it out of their memory.
Yeah, and
They go, who did I talk to?
They hate doing it. It's just
What did he
awful.
say? Yeah.
You know.
Oh, yes.
And
Absolutely
now,
painful.
half the stuff, I mean, maybe they're sending the emails out of NetSuite, so it's all tracked already.
Oh.
And the sales manager doesn't even ask. Anytime during the week he wants to. He doesn't wait till Friday. It's real time. This stuff's going in right now.
Because what it's really doing is it's capturing the behavior of the salesperson rather than doing a sort of at the end of the week summary of all the activity. As they're doing work, doing their job, it's capturing that information.
Yeah, so, yeah, exactly. I mean, you caught the concept there. And so the guy's just doing his work.
Yeah.
The report is generating itself. Standard NetSuite report should be on every sales manager's dashboard in NetSuite. We try and make sure it is anyway. Sales activity by sales rep. Bar chart. You know, Joe did 18 calls yesterday, and Fred did 6.
Well, you know, at the end of the day, it also shows you, you know, now maybe the guy who did 6 calls wrote more business.
Yeah, and so why?
Yeah, so the question is, what's he doing right? Is he working with, he's got really solid relationships. The guy that's making 18 calls, he's not listening, he's not hearing what people are saying to him.
Or he's saying the wrong thing.
Or he's saying the wrong thing, or he's not providing the right product or solution.
I know all about saying the wrong thing. I've done that a few times too.
So, you know, sometimes people talk back, as we say in sales, you talk past the close.
Yep.
You know, you're not listening, you're talking, you're not listening.
I heard a judge one time, and this was I was in for a little car adventure about ownership, and the attorney wasn't on the case in front of mine. He was talking, and then the judge said, "Oh, I'm going to rule in your favor," and he does it. And the attorney kept talking and citing precedents to prove his case. I mean, he kept going.
Yes.
And the judge said, "Yeah, okay," and a couple of times, and then finally the judge says, "You know what? They didn't teach you in law school that once you've won the case, shut up."
Yes.
Once the customer says yes, stop.
Yes. That's called talking past the close. You can talk yourself out of a sale.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's this, you know, and it sounds like to me what you're really doing is you're giving people the tools to do their job better, and it's up to them how they use them. But obviously, NetSuite incorporates a CRM, CRM,
Customer relationship management.
Yeah, customer relationship management system.
Right.
Managing contacts, conversations, keeping track of what was said. You've got an ERM solution, which is enterprise, what do you call it?
Resource
ERM?
planning.
Resource planning, enterprise resource planning.
Or management.
You've got inventory control systems built into the system. You've got your whole e-commerce component where you order fulfillment.
Yeah, and an actual web store if you want to go there in NetSuite. Yeah.
And you have happy customers. Zuri says it. You have lots of happy customers. CORE-Effect has consistently earned our trust. This is from NORPAC.
Yeah. Scotty.
Yes. So people like the product. It's even being used overseas, internationally.
Yeah, that's a funny story about meeting Carlos. He's got a Spanish name, Carlos Granon. But he's actually a Frenchman. His father was a Spaniard. But he lives in Tokyo, and he's the CEO of a company based in Hong Kong that has multiple subsidiaries throughout Asia. And his head of his IT department is a Thai national. But anyway, I met him in San Francisco at the annual NetSuite conference.
Sounds like this guy has some serious identity issues.
Well, the company too. But anyway, you know, I met the guy, we got started talking. He goes, you know, I got this tremendous headache with our transfer orders for inventory. And I said, well, look, I've solved that for one of our clients in the US. You know, you want to talk? And he said, yeah. So we got on Skype with this guy in Bangkok, and he was in Tokyo, so I had to kind of stay up late to talk to these guys. And sure enough, you know, what we had already built was good for them. So we turned it on.
Very good. Excellent. Well, thank you, Jay, for being on the show. I appreciate it. I'm Chris Lethem. I hope you enjoyed today's show. I hope it was informative and you got something out of it. And if you're a small business and you want to reach out and converse with Jay about the NetSuite platform, feel free to give him a call. And thank you again, Jay. I'm Chris Lethem. This is The Economy in You, and I hope to see you next week. Aloha.